I'm wearing this bicycle helmet because you never know, Zeus might strike me down with a thunderbolt, because Circe might have become one of my favorite Greek god or goddesses in the entire pantheon, in the entire Titan god, goddess, extravaganza. Isn't this book just simply beautiful? It has this wonderful perforation right here where you can just, it's like bubble wrap where you can pop it. Comes up and down, you just play with it. I mean, it's a really good stress relief just to... Okay, I think we can take the helmet off now. The success of this book and the good word of mouth of this book, I assume, comes from the fact that Circe is a lesser known god or goddess. Her father is the sun god, Helios, and her mother is a nymph, Perse. And as we find out in the book, the amount of nymphs outnumber the gods and goddesses, really. I mean, well, they are goddesses. And I almost think if the nymphs got together and they didn't have so many squabbles between each other, that they could like really do some damage to Olympus. But such is not the case. And there's that little perforation I just want to keep. So the success of this book is really because Madeline Miller, brilliant. This is my first book I've ever read of hers. I'm reading Song of Achilles right now, and this is still better than that. Well, whatever, that's how I feel. But the success is because it's a lesser known goddess. There's a lot more room for creative license. There's a lot more room to expand upon the classics and the mythology. And in this wonderful, beautiful, brilliant way, Madeline Miller brings so many of the most beloved stories, Glaucus, Scylla, Daedalus, I want to say Agamemnon, but it's actually Odysseus, the Odyssey, all this mythology, and it wafts through Circe's life. So she's not really extending herself into it. It's wafting through her life on this island where she has become exiled. And let's talk about why she's become exiled. Upon Circe's birth and her growth, she has no identifiable powers. She doesn't even speak, walk, or act like a god or goddess when she's born. She has 3 other siblings, and she's ridiculed a lot because they hate hearing her mortal-sounding voice. Isn't that awful? Imagine, and maybe many of you have been through this, and this is another reason why this book might be so successful, is the relatability of being in a family where your father ignores you, your mother despises you, your sister hates you, your younger brother who you love betrays you, you're exiled, you're thrown away, and guess what Circe does? She picks herself up from her broken pieces. She's alone for the first time in her life, beholden to none, and she rocks. She thrives. And although she has no powers outside of her immortality, she becomes, I think, one of the first witches that's ever been written in the Western pantheon, in Western culture. So that's the first couple chapters of this book, very introductory, not very literary, but let me tell you, after that, this becomes literature. Beautifully written. There's sections in the book that I'd love to read, and I am going to make a second video where I just go in on Greek and Roman mythology, because I studied the classics like Madeline Miller. I took Latin like Madeline Miller. We translated all kinds of texts. I studied Greek and Roman mythology, but because of my Latin school background, we were mostly it's mostly taken from the Roman theology and perspective. What you have to understand, all the Romans did was take the Greek gods, rename them, and embellish the stories. So I never really knew about Circe. We obviously, the Odyssey, the Iliad, the Aeneid, all of that we went through a lot, but Circe is really not talked about that much. In fact, in Roman understandings, I think she's actually referred to as a different name. I think it's Hecate, or I'm not sure, but I think she's actually, in the Roman tradition, I'm probably very wrong about this, considered the goddess of witches, or the goddess of witchcraft. There is one. There is a god or goddess for almost every single thing. Like everything you can see, everything you can do, and everything you can feel. There's a god or goddess that controls that. I love that there's like the goddess of running, which is Nike, and now that's a huge brand. So again, let me just repeat a little bit of the wave of this book. Her father despises her, her mother hates her sister hates her brother's betrayed her. She's been exiled to this island that has all these creatures on it, and Circe discovers that she has this gift of witchcraft, which is uh, manipulating herbs, flour, essence from flour, saps, different, any kind of little thing that she can boil and bobble, and pronouncing spells. She is known in the classics for turning men who come to her island into pigs. But in this book, that's not really the big takeaway. It's not even a major aspect of the story. The story is really how Circe is defiant and overcomes. And in classic tradition, Circe, I don't know if she's considered so beautiful or whatever, but she is a woman. She's a woman that any woman could relate to. This book is brilliantly written. I can't even tell you. I have to even stop to think about what I even want to say. Read you just a little bit, just to give you a little taste of the writing of Madeline Miller. Daedalus did not long outlive his son. His limbs turned gray and nerveless, and all his strength was transmuted into smoke. I had no right to claim him, I knew it, but in a solitary life, there are rare moments when another soul dips near yours. As stars once a year brush the earth, such a constellation was he to me. You know, a lot of people that are dealing with being, is it infirmed or confined, or you have agoraphobia, you're really going to love this book, because I relate to it in that way, especially with anxiety and agoraphobia. And to have this person who is stationary and everything just kind of comes to her, it's a blessing. It's very much a lucky thing for Circe, and maybe that's one of the things that was her power that she was told she didn't have any of. And it's a journey. It reminds me of a real life story by Shel Strayed, Wild, where she's not on a road trip, but she's on a walking trip. And this is definitely an island trip, such as the things that come to Circe's island. And I rate this book a red alert. I have this on because as of right now, I am totally consumed by Avengers Endgame. I just put up a 14-minute review. So, yeah. I had a lot to say about this book, but I'm going to stop. You have to read it. It's red alert status. It's one of my favorite books I've read in a very, very long time. I can't think of anything better right now. So go read this book. Go read this book. It's actually, the reason I read it was because it's in my local book club. We're reading it for my local book club. So there you go.